The smell of my burned daughter's teddy bear still clung to my robes when Constance Whitmore walked into my courtroom like she owned it. That same psychotic smile she'd worn while poisoning my dead wife's roses with bleach. The one she'd flashed while stealing $89,000 from our neighbors. The one she'd probably had when she watched my house burn to ash. But this HOA terrorist made one fatal error. She never bothered learning who she was destroying. I'm not just some random single dad she could bully into submission. I'm Federal Judge Thaddeus Morrison. And she just committed arson against the one man in this district with the legal power to annihilate her existence. 2 years ago, life was damn near perfect. I'm Thaddeus Morrison, 15-year federal prosecutor who'd put away everyone from cartel bosses to corrupt senators. My 12-year-old daughter Zara and I lived in our modest craftsman house in Willowbrook Heights. The house wasn't much, faded blue siding, white trim that Sarah had insisted on painting herself while pregnant. But God, it was everything. The morning coffee still tasted better in Sarah's favorite mug. Even 3 years after cancer stole my wife, every creaking floorboard held memories I wasn't ready to let go. Willowbrook Heights was paradise for people like us. Young families, retirees, single parents just trying to give their kids stability. Block parties where the smell of charcoal and laughter drifted until midnight. The kind of place where neighbors mowed each other's lawns without asking. Then the devil moved in next door. Constance Whitmore arrived 18 months ago in a white Escalade that screamed money. Designer everything, blonde hair that cost more than most people's rent, and eyes like a great white shark. Her husband worked overseas, oil money, always traveling, which meant Constance had unlimited time to make everyone else's life hell. Within 72 hours, she'd printed business cards calling herself HOA Compliance Coordinator, a title that existed nowhere in our neighborhood's practically non-existent housing agreement. See, Willowbrook Heights technically had an HOA, but it was dead. Formed in 1987, never properly incorporated, hadn't held a meeting since Bush Sr. was in office. We liked it that way. But Constance saw opportunity like a vulture spots roadkill. She started prowling the neighborhood with a clipboard, taking photos, measuring lawns, interrogating neighbors about property values. Her first target was my mailbox. Vintage cast iron with hand-painted numbers that Sarah had done during one of her nesting phases. It was one of the last things Sarah had touched before Zara was born. Constance declared it non-compliant and demanded I replace it within 48 hours or face $50 daily fines. I'm a federal prosecutor. I smell bullshit from 3 counties away. Quick county record search revealed our HOA had zero legal authority. Better yet, federal employees have specific protections against discriminatory housing enforcement. I drafted a polite but firm letter explaining why Constance could take her fake fines and shove them where her fake smile couldn't reach. That letter should have ended everything. Instead, it started a war. Constance's response arrived exactly 72 hours later. She declared war. At 6 a.m. on a Tuesday, I woke to the sound of my sprinkler system running full blast. I stumbled outside to find Constance standing in Sarah's memorial rose garden with a spray bottle, systematically murdering every bush my dead wife had planted. "Morning, Thad," she chirped. "Just helping with your little pest problem." The chemical smell hit me like a punch. Industrial-strength herbicide that could kill a redwood tree. Those roses weren't just plants. They were Sarah's heartbeat still pulsing in our yard. The week before cancer took her, Sarah had gripped my hand and made me swear to keep them alive. "What the hell are you doing?" I managed through clenched teeth. "Solving the bee problem these roses create. We can't have dangerous insects threatening our children." That shark smile stretched wider. "There's no bee problem." "Oh, but there is. Mrs. Peterson's granddaughter is severely allergic. I've documented 17 bee incidents just this month." Pure fiction. Mrs. Peterson was 87, lived alone, and hadn't had visitors in years. That night, watching Sarah's roses curl and blacken in the moonlight, I made my first strategic move. I installed a comprehensive security system. 6 cameras, motion sensors, night vision, cloud backup. Years of prosecuting criminals had taught me that predators like Constance always escalate. The investment paid off within 72 hours. 2:47 a.m., my phone buzzed with motion alerts. There was Constance, dressed head to toe in black, creeping through my backyard with bleach and a stack of official-looking papers. Night vision captured everything. Her pouring industrial bleach onto root systems, then carefully placing fake HOA violation notices under decorative rocks. The forged documents were masterpieces of suburban fraud, complete with fake neighbor signatures and entirely fictional meeting minutes. But Constance made one fatal error. She'd forged Mrs. Lucy's signature. Mrs. Lucy, whose arthritic hands could barely grip a coffee cup. I had everything any prosecutor dreams of. Video evidence, forgery, trespassing, destruction of property. So the next morning, I marched into the police station with my evidence folder and filed formal charges with Sergeant Rick Bellows. That's when I discovered just how far Constance's infection had spread. "Look, Mr. Morrison," Bellows said, sliding my unopened evidence folder back. "Mrs. Whitmore is a pillar of our community. Church volunteer, school fundraiser. You sure you're not having some adjustment issues since your wife passed?" The horrible truth crystallized. Constance hadn't just targeted my roses. She'd already poisoned the entire system against me. 3 weeks later, Constance escalated to attacking my family directly. My sister Rebecca had driven from Portland for Zara's birthday. Saturday night, we stayed up until midnight assembling Zara's birthday bike. Around 1 a.m., Rebecca parked her beat-up Honda Civic in my driveway, exactly where every visitor had parked for 5 years. At 6:15 a.m., violent pounding on my door jolted me awake, followed by Zara's terrified screaming. "Daddy, there's a scary truck stealing Aunt Becca's car." I stumbled outside to find a massive tow truck already winching Rebecca's Honda onto its flatbed. "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" "Vehicle violation, buddy. No overnight guest parking." He shoved a grease-stained receipt at me. $350 to get it back. Cash only. That's when Constance emerged from behind the tow truck. "Morning, Thad. Terribly sorry about the confusion, but community standards must be maintained." She produced a glossy flyer claiming new overnight guest parking restrictions. The most insane part? Rebecca's ancient Civic was classified as a commercial vehicle because of a small dent near the license plate. I noticed the company logo, Bellows Recovery Services. Same name as Sergeant Rick Bellows. The conspiracy crystallized like poison in my mind. Constance identifies defenseless targets using fake HOA authority. Brother-in-law cop Rick dismisses all complaints. Other brother-in-law Richard runs the illegal towing operation. That afternoon, I channeled 15 years of white-collar prosecution experience into investigating this corruption ring. County records revealed the beautiful ugly truth. Willowbrook Heights HOA was never properly incorporated. For 35 years, we'd operated on an honor system. Then I discovered complaint records. 47 formal violations filed in 18 months, every single one signed by Constance Whitmore. She exclusively targeted single parents, elderly residents, and minorities. But before I could expose this criminal enterprise, Constance shattered the last line civilized people never cross. She went after my daughter. Tuesday afternoon, I was in federal court when my phone exploded with emergency calls. 12 missed calls in 30 minutes, all from Zara's school. I abandoned my prosecution mid-closing argument and drove 90 through suburban streets. I found Zara in the nurse's office, pale as death, clutching her rescue inhaler while her whole body trembled. "Daddy," she collapsed into my arms. There were bad men in our house. They had cameras and they wouldn't leave. Principal Watson explained Zara had come home for lunch and found 2 men inside conducting some kind of inspection. When she asked for identification, they told her little girls shouldn't question adult authority. Officers said the inspection was legitimate, anonymous safety complaints requiring immediate investigation. The men had photographed everything. Her bedroom, my home office, even inside our medicine cabinet. But in their arrogance, they'd left evidence. A business card revealed Morrison Property Assessments LLC registered that morning to a vacant lot. The certified building inspector was actually Derek Whitmore, Constance's unemployed cousin with 3 DUI arrests and a meth possession charge. That night, while Zara slept in my bed too traumatized to be alone, I filed an emergency restraining order. 18 months of documented harassment, using fake authority to traumatize a child, criminal trespass. Judge Patricia Hernandez granted it immediately. Constance was forbidden from approaching me, my daughter, or my property for 6 months. I felt victorious for exactly 14 hours. Wednesday morning, I woke to voices on my front porch. Through the window, I saw Constance chatting with 2 police officers, coffee cup in hand. When she spotted me watching, she waved cheerfully and dabbed her eyes with a tissue. Sergeant Rick Bellows looked up. "Mr. Morrison, Mrs. Whitmore says you threatened her life yesterday. Made some pretty specific threats about making her disappear permanently." "That's impossible. I was in federal court all day, then at my daughter's school. Dozens of witnesses. Constance's performance deserved an Oscar." Trembling hands, tears on cue. "I know grief makes people say terrible things, Thad, but when you told me you'd bury me so deep even God couldn't find the body, I had to protect myself." About that, Bellows interrupted. "Mrs. Whitmore filed a counter-restraining order claiming you've been stalking her. Judge signed it 2 hours ago." The legal bear trap snapped shut with surgical precision. 2 conflicting restraining orders would paralyze the courts for months. But this time, her sociopathic cleverness had backfired. Filing false police reports against a federal prosecutor isn't just local corruption. It's a federal crime carrying 20 years in prison. That night, I made a phone call that would change everything. "Marcus, it's Thad Morrison. I need a favor." Marcus Webb had been my law school roommate before becoming the FBI's best financial crimes investigator. I explained the situation. 18 months of escalating harassment, fake HOA authority, criminal trespass, terrorizing my daughter. "You think this is about money?" "It's always about money, Marcus. Always." 48 hours later, Marcus called back with information that made my blood run cold. "Your suburban terrorist is drowning in debt, buddy. Catastrophic financial collapse. Constance owed $89,000 in back taxes on a rental property bought with fraudulent income documentation. Her husband's overseas oil job had ended 8 months ago. The escalade was 3 payments from repossession, and she had 17 maxed-out credit cards. But here's where it gets interesting. She's been collecting HOA assessment payments from your neighbors for 18 months. We're talking $340,000 that should have gone into a community fund. There is no community fund. Exactly. She's been pocketing every penny while using intimidation to keep people paying. Classic extortion scheme with a suburban twist. How many families has she targeted? 23 households paid illegal assessments. Another dozen got hit with violation fines ranging from $50 to $500. She's particularly vicious toward minorities and single parents. Federal mail fraud charges are slam dunk. She used postal service to deliver fake HOA notices demanding payment, wire fraud for electronic transfers, and if you can prove she targeted people based on race or family status, civil rights violations under the Fair Housing Act. For the first time in 18 months, I felt the cold satisfaction of a predator about to become prey. I needed surveillance, financial records, victim statements. Marcus got me a federal task force within a week. My first call went to Special Agent Rebecca Torres at the FBI's Economic Crimes Unit. Federal employees being targeted for housing harassment, mail fraud, using fake HOA authority. This is a prosecutor's wet dream. I can have a task force assembled by Thursday. Next, I contacted the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. $89,000 in undeclared revenue plus tax evasion on rental property. We're talking felony charges with mandatory minimums. But the most important call went to the Justice Department Civil Rights Division. Fair Housing Act violations with a pattern of discriminatory enforcement. If we can prove systematic targeting based on protected characteristics, we're looking at hate crime enhancements. While federal agencies mobilized, I organized my terrorized neighbors into willing witnesses. That Saturday, I knocked on Mrs. Lucy's door. "Mrs. Lucy, I need to ask you about the neighborhood fees you've been paying to Constance." Her weathered face filled with worry. "I don't want trouble, Mr. Morrison." She said if I don't pay, she'd call immigration on my grandson Tommy. By Sunday evening, I had quietly visited 17 households, documenting a pattern of abuse. Young families paying illegal assessments to avoid fabricated violations. Elderly residents surrendering life savings to prevent fake legal actions. Single mothers working double shifts to afford Constance's phantom fines. Marcus Rodriguez, the nervous young dad, broke down in tears. She said if I didn't pay the pool maintenance fee, she'd report me to Child Protective Services for unsafe living conditions. There was no pool in our neighborhood. Never had been. Within 72 hours, we had secured court orders for phone taps on both Bellows brothers and Constance. Hidden cameras went up around the neighborhood. The breakthrough came when forensic accountants discovered Constance's secret weapon, a fake property management company called Willowbrook Community Services. For 18 months, she'd been sending professional invoices for non-existent services. But the most damning evidence came from her own greed. Text messages between Constance and Derek revealed her entire strategy. Target the single parents and old people first. They're too scared or stupid to fight back. Digital forensics also uncovered her research on my family. She'd spent hours online learning about Sarah's death, Zara's medical issues, my court schedule. One particularly chilling browser search read, "How to make federal prosecutor look unstable custody hearing." By Friday morning, we had assembled the kind of case that makes defense attorneys weep. Federal mail fraud, wire fraud, tax evasion, civil rights violations, racketeering, conspiracy, and criminal intimidation. 23 victims willing to testify. 6 months of recorded phone calls. 3 weeks into the federal investigation, Constance must have sensed the walls closing in because her harassment escalated into something far more dangerous. It started with the break-in that wasn't a break-in. I came home from court on a Thursday evening to find my front door slightly ajar, the bitter smell of cigarette smoke drifting from inside. The house looked like a hurricane had hit it. Drawers dumped, papers scattered, furniture overturned. But nothing valuable was missing. Instead, someone had been searching for something specific. On my kitchen table sat a manila envelope marked evidence of judicial misconduct filled with fabricated documents. Fake bank statements showing mysterious deposits. Doctored emails suggesting I'd taken bribes. Professional quality photographs of me talking to Marcus Webb with captions claiming he was a known criminal informant. The masterpiece was a forged letter on federal courthouse letterhead, allegedly from me to Constance, containing graphic threats. The forgery was good enough to fool casual inspection, but Constance had made 2 fatal errors. First, the letter was dated for a day when I'd been in Washington, D.C. testifying before Congress. Second, she'd used phrases no federal prosecutor would ever write. More importantly, FBI surveillance had recorded Derek Whitmore breaking into my house while Constance directed the operation from her car. "Plant the envelope on the kitchen table where they'll definitely find it," her voice crackled through federal recording equipment. "Make sure you get fingerprints on everything so it looks like he was trying to hide evidence." The irony was beautiful. While committing federal breaking and entering to frame me for crimes I didn't commit, she was creating ironclad evidence of crimes she actually was committing. Friday morning, local news ran a story that made my stomach drop. Federal judge under investigation for corruption. Someone had leaked the fabricated evidence to Channel 7. The story was carefully crafted to destroy my reputation without making legally actionable claims. Within hours, my phone was ringing with calls from judicial conduct investigators, federal supervisors, and defense attorneys from every case I'd prosecuted. But the most devastating call came from Zara's school. "Mr. Morrison, we've received some concerning information about your home situation. Child Protective Services will be conducting a welfare check this afternoon." The final piece. of Constance's strategy clicked into place. Frame me for corruption, trigger CPS investigation, use my criminal behavior to justify removing Zara from my custody. When CPS investigator Janet Mills arrived, she spent 30 minutes going through the motions, checking our refrigerator, Zara's bedroom. She clearly recognized a setup when she saw one. Whoever called this in wanted to cause maximum disruption to your family. I'm closing this case as unfounded, but I have to warn you, they'll probably try again. That night, I called Agent Torres immediately. Rebecca, we need to move up the timeline. She's escalating toward violence. How long do you think we have? I looked at surveillance photos again, studying Constance's expression. The smile of someone who'd crossed every moral line and was preparing to cross the final one. Not long enough. The arson happened on a Tuesday afternoon when desperation finally drove Constance past the point of no return. I was in federal court prosecuting a Medicare fraud case when my phone started buzzing with emergency alerts. The first text message made my world collapse. House fire at 847, Maple Street. Fire department responding. I abandoned the courtroom mid-cross examination, breaking every traffic law between downtown and Willowbrook Heights. The acrid smell of smoke hit me 3 blocks away. That distinctive chemical stench that meant someone had used accelerant to guarantee maximum destruction. Fire trucks lined our normally quiet street, their red lights painting everything in hellish shades while neighbors gathered in shocked clusters. But the scene that stopped my heart was Zara standing on Mrs. Luce's front lawn, tears streaming down her soot-stained face as she watched 18 years of memories burn to ash. Daddy, she ran into my arms, her whole body shaking. I got home from school and there was already smoke everywhere. Mrs. Lucy made me stay at her house and call 911. Fire Marshal Davidson met me at the police tape. Started in the basement, spread fast through the first floor. We managed to contain it before it reached the second story, but he didn't need to finish. The house was gutted. Any idea what caused it? Davidson's 20-year veteran eyes held no illusions about accidental fires. Accelerant pattern suggests arson. ATF's been called in due to your federal employment status. This gets treated as potential domestic terrorism until proven otherwise. The next 6 hours blurred together in a nightmare of investigators, insurance adjusters, and the slow realization that we'd lost everything that mattered. Photo albums from Zara's childhood, Sarah's jewelry, the hand-painted furniture Sarah had spent months refinishing. Even the rebuilt Memorial Rose Garden was nothing but charred earth and melted metal. But Constance had made her final fatal mistake. ATF Special Agent Monica Rodriguez arrived with a team of federal arson investigators who treated our home like a crime scene from CSI. Within 2 hours, they had found clear evidence of professional accelerant placement, timer devices, and most damning of all, security footage from Mrs. Luce's doorbell camera showing Derek Whitmore entering our house at 1:47 p.m. carrying a suspicious duffel bag. Your neighbor's cousin isn't the brightest criminal we've seen, Rodriguez explained while showing me enhanced video footage. Left fingerprints on the accelerant containers, dropped his driver's license in your basement, and was stupid enough to use his own credit card to buy timer devices at Home Depot yesterday. By 8 p.m., Derek was in federal custody spilling everything to save himself from terrorism charges. Constance said the judge was trying to destroy her with fake investigations, Derek whined to federal agents. She said if we burned his house down, he'd be too busy with insurance companies to keep harassing her. Plus, she promised me $10,000 from the neighborhood fee she'd been collecting. But the most damning evidence came from Constance's own phone, which federal wiretaps had been recording for weeks. Her conversation with Derek 3 hours before the fire was a prosecutor's dream of criminal stupidity. Make sure you use enough accelerant to destroy everything, her voice crackled through FBI recording equipment. Target the basement first, then the kitchen where he keeps all his legal files. I want 18 months of his work against me turned to ash. What if someone gets hurt? The kids at school, he's at court. House should be empty. But even if someone gets hurt, they brought this on themselves by not minding their own business. The casual discussion of potential murder charges was breathtaking in its sociopathic calculation. Constance hadn't just committed arson. She'd done it with complete disregard for human life, which elevated the charges to attempted murder under federal terrorism statutes. Agent Torres arrived as Derek was being loaded into a federal transport van. "We've got enough evidence to put both of them away for life. Arson, conspiracy, terrorism charges against a federal employee. The U.S. attorney is calling this the easiest federal prosecution he's seen in 20 years. But the sweetest moment came at 11:30 p.m. when a convoy of federal vehicles surrounded Constance's house with enough firepower to invade a small country. Through Mrs. Luce's window, we watched tactical agents arrest the suburban terrorist who'd spent 18 months making our lives hell. She was still wearing her designer pajamas and perfectly applied makeup when they dragged her out in handcuffs. That arrogant smirk finally replaced by the terror of someone realizing their victims had more power than they'd ever imagined. The last thing she saw before being stuffed into a federal transport van was me standing in Mrs. Luce's yard, holding my daughter close, watching justice finally arrive with badges and arrest warrants. 6 months later, the moment I'd been dreaming about since finding Constance poisoning Sarah's roses finally arrived. United States versus Constance Whitmore and Derek Whitmore, federal court, full media circus. I'd recused myself from the case, but visiting Judge Patricia Hernandez had no such conflicts. The courthouse steps were packed with news crews from 3 states. HOA Karen federal arson trial had become a national story. Inside, the courtroom gallery was standing room only. Mrs. Lucy sat in the front row wearing her best dress and a satisfied smile. Marcus Rodriguez held his wife's hand. 23 families whose lives had been shattered by Constance's greed, all waiting to watch justice served with federal precision. But the moment that made 18 months of hell worthwhile came when bailiffs escorted Constance into the courtroom. Orange jumpsuit, shackles, hair unwashed, makeup gone. The arrogant suburban queen had been reduced to prisoner number for 7891, and the transformation was beautiful to behold. She scanned the gallery with desperate eyes, looking for sympathetic faces among the crowd of neighbors she'd terrorized. Instead, she found only victims waiting for vindication. When her gaze finally landed on me, sitting in the gallery's second row, her face went white as courthouse marble. Federal prosecutor Amanda Walsh had prepared a case that would be studied in law schools for decades. The evidence presentation took 3 days. Phone recordings of Constance planning crimes. Video footage of Derek committing arson. Financial records showing systematic theft from 23 families. Expert testimony about psychological terrorism and housing discrimination. But the moment that broke Constance's remaining composure came when Prosecutor Walsh played the wiretapped conversation from the day of the arson. "Make sure you use enough accelerant to destroy everything," Constance's recorded voice filled the silent courtroom. "I want 18 months of his work against me turned to ash. What if someone gets hurt? Even if someone gets hurt, they brought this on themselves." The casual discussion of potential murder charges echoed through the courtroom like a death sentence. Jury members visibly recoiled. Gallery observers gasped. Even Constance's overpriced defense attorney looked like he wanted to crawl under his table. When the recording ended, Judge Hernandez's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Mrs. Whitmore, you discussed burning down a family's home with complete disregard for whether a 12-year-old child might be killed. Do you have anything to say about that?" Constance's lawyer frantically whispered in her ear, probably begging her to stay silent. But 18 months of unchecked arrogance had destroyed whatever impulse control she'd once possessed. She stood up, shackles clinking, and delivered the most self-destructive statement in federal court history. "Your Honor, I was protecting our neighborhood from someone who refused to follow community standards. Mr. Morrison thought being a federal employee made him special, made him exempt from rules that apply to everyone else. Someone had to teach him that no one is above accountability." The courtroom erupted. Gasps, whispers, the scratch of reporters' pens capturing every word of Constance's confession. She'd just admitted to arson, terrorism, and targeting a federal employee specifically because of his government position. Judge Hernandez gavelled for order, but her eyes held the cold satisfaction of someone about to deliver justice with surgical precision. Mrs. Whitmore, you just confessed to federal terrorism charges while showing zero remorse for nearly killing a child. Your actions terrorized an entire neighborhood, stole hundreds of thousands of dollars from working families, and culminated in arson that could have murdered innocent people. The sentencing took exactly 3 minutes. Constance Whitmore, you are hereby sentenced to 15 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. Derek Whitmore, your cooperation earns you 8 years with supervised release. You will both pay full restitution to your victims, totaling $473,000 in stolen fees, property damage, and punitive damages. The gallery exploded in applause. Mrs. Lucy wiped tears from her eyes. Marcus Rodriguez kissed his wife. 23 families who'd lived in terror for 18 months finally watched their tormentor face consequences that matched her crimes. But the sweetest moment came as bailiffs prepared to escort Constance back to federal custody. She turned for one last look at the gallery, searching for sympathy that would never come. Instead, she found me standing with Zara, both of us watching her federal conviction with the satisfaction that only true justice can provide. 2 years later, the smell of fresh coffee mingles with blooming roses as I sit in our rebuilt kitchen, watching Zara practice her driving in the driveway where this nightmare began. The new house rose from Constance's ashes like a phoenix built of steel and determination. Insurance money, federal victim compensation, and donations from neighbors who'd found their courage created something stronger than what we'd lost. Zara's bedroom overlooks the memorial garden where Sarah's roses now bloom alongside contributions from every family Constance had terrorized. Mrs. Lucy tends the garden each morning, her weathered hands nurturing beauty where evil once tried to plant fear. But our personal healing was just the beginning. Willowbrook Heights transformed into something unprecedented. A neighborhood that actually protects its residents. Our legitimate HOA, formed 6 months after Constance's conviction, operates with bylaws written by constitutional lawyers and transparency that makes corruption impossible. The $473,000 in recovered stolen fees funded miracles. Solar-powered streetlights that make evening walks safe. A state-of-the-art playground where children's laughter replaces the memory of Constance's threats. Most importantly, those funds seeded the Willowbrook Heights Justice Fund, which has helped 87 families across the country escape their own HOA nightmares. Marcus Rodriguez, once terrified of Constance's fake authority, now directs our legal education program, teaching families 3 critical steps. Always demand to see HOA incorporation documents through county records. If they can't produce legitimate legal authority, their power is completely fake, and you can ignore every demand they make. Constance herself serves as a permanent reminder that actions have consequences. Year 3 of 15 at Federal Correctional Institution Danbury, working prison laundry for 23 cents hourly while her victims thrive in the community she tried to destroy. But the victory that matters most happened last month at our 3rd annual community festival. Zara, now 16 and fierce with Sarah's determination, announced scholarship recipients to a crowd of 600 people. These awards honor kids whose parents never surrendered to bullies, she declared. Because the best revenge against people who try to destroy you is building something beautiful where they left ashes. Standing in our garden as sunset painted the roses gold, I felt Sarah's presence in every bloom, every laugh, every moment of peace that evil had tried to steal but couldn't destroy. We didn't just survive Constance Whitmore's reign of terror. We transformed it into something beautiful. Your turn to fight back. Share your HOA horror story in the comments below. You're not alone, and together, we can expose these suburban predators. Hit subscribe to HOA Stories for more tales where justice wins and communities heal. Because good people really do triumph when they refuse to surrender. The war for your neighborhood starts with one brave family willing to stand up. Make sure that family is yours.